Hi, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and welcome to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation at Home. Today's guest is a Golden Globe, Emmy, and two-time SAG Award winner whose previous credits include The X-Files, American Gods, and The Spy Who Dumped Me. She currently stars as oversharing sex therapist and mother Jean Milburn on Sex Education. Please welcome Gillian Anderson. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
This is primarily an audience of SAG actors who tune into these. So I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
Oh my gosh. I think I did a commercial for Hardee's hamburgers. I think that's how it happened. Yes. I think that was it. It was a very long time ago, but I think it was Hardee's.
Did you do many commercials starting out?
I think I did two.
Oh, okay.
I think I did two commercials, and that was one of them. And then I got into theater, so I got lucky.
I mean, I think anyone who gets into theater is lucky. I think it's such a great medium. I was fortunate enough to see you in All About Eve. Got to sit in the front row, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Do you have a favorite medium? Is theater your first love, or is it all sort of equal?
It's all kind of equal. I mean, I feel very blessed to have an opportunity to jump between them, and I think that's the thing that I like the most about any one of them is that I have a difficult relationship with theater because I get incredibly anxious, and so I only generally do theater every 3 years or so, and so there's a certain point in my life where I suddenly start to yearn for it again and think it just has to be a part of my life again. But when I'm at the end of doing the previous one, I do think, what the hell was I thinking? And why do I subject myself to this? And yeah, so, but that said, I also really, really love it. And it's like nothing else. It's like no other of our mediums, just that direct, raw relationship with an audience in that way.
And you're not just doing theater, you're doing some of the most iconic roles of all time. I mean, you've done Blanche Dubois, you've done Margot Channing, you've done Nora in A Doll's House. Like, is there some, another iconic role you're dying to
which? I don't know. I mean, I'm asked that a lot, and it's hard to find something after you've done a role like Blanche. It's hard to know where to go, and so I'm trying to think about it in a different way and to expand my knowledge of theater and new playwrights and different ways of looking at challenges. And so that's actually been something I've been thinking about for the past couple of weeks, particularly as America has been imploding and exploding, and so many changes are in the process of hopefully finally being implemented that it seems like there's a lot of things that need to be thought about a little bit differently.
Absolutely. And by the way, amongst all those characters I just named, I would add Jean from Sex Education. I love this character. Just premiered its second season, I guess, earlier this year on Netflix. And I heard when the script found its way to you, you initially weren't interested.
Yeah. I had read part of the first episode, and granted, I'd been looking for something to do that was comedic for a long time, and I don't know why, when it hit me in the face, I didn't recognize it, but I certainly felt upon reading it, I don't know. I don't know whether it was the mood I was in or I don't know what it was, what I have for breakfast. But I didn't think that it was for me. And it wasn't until my partner kind of dug it out of the trash. And he's in the business, and he knew that one of the execs at Netflix, who he knew very well, was behind it, and he thought, if she's behind it, then it's got to be good. And so he started to read it, and I kept getting these texts, these slew of texts in the middle of the night. I think I was in another country, and basically just laughing at every joke. And eventually the consensus amongst himself was that it was that I had to say yes. And so I started to read it again, and then suddenly I couldn't stop, and I read all the episodes, I think, in one sitting, and I don't know why I was blind to it at the beginning.
When you say he had to dig it out of the trash, do you mean literally? Because I've read that you tossed it in the trash, and I didn't know if that was a metaphor.
No, I didn't, because I try not to print things out too much, but he did. He knew that I had passed.
Okay, I had this mental image of the great Peter Morgan, like going through the trash to dig out a script. I just wanted to know if that was true or not.
No, but he has been known to dig other things out of the trash. So
it's interesting because I know you're an author yourself, and Jean is an author, and I was thinking of some of the parallels. But was there any special preparation that you had to take on to play this part?
Aside from being in therapy since I was 14, no, not really. I mean, I did, what did I do? I may have done nothing, which is quite rare for me, because normally I get very obsessive with research and etc. But I think I did feel that the amount of decades that I had already been on a couch of one sort or another, that I had a sense of many different therapist personalities, and how they relate to their clients, and so, you know, that obviously in talking about specific things within the script for filming, I would, you know, research stuff, some of which I had never known the definition of before, and etc. But I've never been to a sex therapist per se, but I think one of the things that I was talking to Ben Taylor, who is one of our directors and the exec producer, and an exec producer on it, was I couldn't square how this woman, who you know, was apparently such a good therapist, you know, and had written books and etc., could do some of the things that she did in terms of parenting. And it wasn't until you know, in the same way that in picking up the script at the first time, when it wasn't until I got that aspect of her, that duality, and all the many juxtapositions of Jean, that I kind of fully got and embraced who she was. I wasn't fighting it. I embraced that as much as I possibly could, because up until that point, I mean, every time I talked to Ben, it was like, but she's going through his drawer. Are you kidding me? She wouldn't do that. But of course she would, because she's Jean.
I think it would be kind of fun to play someone with so few inhibitions as Jean.
It is. It's so much fun, and I'm sure that I've found many new inhibitions that weren't actually in the script to begin with. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of fun, and I feel incredibly grateful that you Pete dug it out of the trash and that they thought of me to begin with, but also that to be a part of something that is, really important. It's a big cultural moment, this show, and I think it's given a beautiful platform to a lot of people of all ages, to say, this is who I am, and I'm proud of who I am, and also there's so much compassion and understanding in the show, specifically, I think, where Asa is concerned and the kind of listener he is, and a lot of the advice that he gives is so, heartfelt and really smartly considered, and I think it's a real wonderful step for youngsters specifically to see that kind of communication is possible and feels good, and is taken up by cool people.
I mean, you have such a great chemistry with Asa Butterfield, who plays Otis. I'm sort of curious, was there any sort of a chemistry read going into it, or did you just meet on set?
No, we met on set. We met on set. Wow. And unfortunately, it worked. The biggest irony was that actually he grew up about half a block from my house.
You're kidding.
No. And still spent a lot of time there because his mom still lives there. His real mom still lives there. And so we discovered that first season, which is very cool. I mean, he's such a great, interesting and surprising, not surprising actor, but I think some of the choices that he makes are so surprising and unpredictable. And I think he's just, he's fantastic. And we got very lucky that we had, normally when you're talking about that kind of dynamic, you're talking about it as, a romantic co-lead in a film or whatever. So it's odd to be talking about it in terms of the chemistry with my son, but it's true. It's true. And fortunately, we just, we slid into a very easy routine.
I don't consider myself a prude, but sometimes I hear some of the things Jean says and I kind of wince because I'm just like, oh, wow, Is there anything that has come across in the script that you kind of hesitated, or you have the shooting schedule and that's the day you're sort of I don't want to say dreading, but
I can't think of anything that Jean has said. The day of Otis masturbating in our shared vehicle was quite a day. Many, many takes. Asa was very patient and gung-ho and shameless, and he was fantastic. But that wasn't hard. There was nothing hard about that. I have to say, as an audience, there have definitely been a couple of scenes that even I, who am definitely not a prude, have not even, winced, just like, I can't believe that they're doing that. And one of my favorite scenes, I think, just because of how it's shot and the juxtaposition of, I think, who is it sitting on? I can't remember now. I think somebody's giving, is it Asa who's giving an instruction to Eric and his boyfriend, or somebody's giving an instruction about douching, about anal douching. That's what it is, anal douching, as you do. And but they're doing it in a classroom on a board, and they're also talking about something else, or they're sharing a sandwich, or they're doing, I don't know, but there's just something about the intersection of two completely unrelated and yeah, anyway.
What about filming that epic play, the Romeo and Juliet production that sort of ends the season? Like, I would just be afraid I'd be laughing the entire time.
Well, the play took so long to film, as you can imagine, and was incredibly, orchestrated within an inch of its life, and the bit that Asa and I were in up in that balcony was actually quite separate, and most of our reactions were to things that weren't happening off camera, as I recall. It was a lot of ADs walking and pretending to dance down below while we reacted when there weren't actually actors doing any of that. So I watched it for the first time with everybody else, with the rest of the world, and was so impressed with how it's a really hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to direct, is all of those, each individual's performances are individual performances that take their own bits of rehearsal and choreography, and I thought that they did that really, really well, and so that was a joy to watch as an audience, but we weren't actually watching it on the day up in the balcony.
But that's acting, like, having to act.
Well, I've had to do a lot of that in my life, of people wandering behind the camera with something on a stick while I go, oh, there's been a lot of that. So, yeah, I'm an old bat.
What, aside from some of the saucy dialogue, what has been the biggest challenge of playing Jean?
I don't know if it's really, comedy is very different from drama. And it's a different muscle almost that's used, I think, as an actor. And, I certainly question myself more, and whether I've quite got it right. Is it, I feel like when I'm acting dramatically, because I've acted dramatically for so long, it's easier for me to, do a little adjustment here and here and here and here in the same take. But with comedy, I feel it's easier to just go, kind of go, take it. Just, how about that? And I think sometimes the challenge is to step back and think, actually, no, I'm going to treat this more technically almost. And how can I, that was fine. That will work. And yeah, it was funny, but it needs a bit more tinkering, and to try and tinker with comedy somehow feels like it's such a specific thing than drama, because even comedy, they say, is funnier in a two-shot than it is as a single, and little things like that can make a big difference as to whether something works or not. And whereas you can rely on yourself for emoting or something profound, and your own, but it's something else to project something funny and be able to trust from experience that it will land and it will be caught and it will, in this particular angle, it works, as opposed to just throwing whatever might be funny out there. It's a long explanation to your question, but I think that's what I think.
I was thinking of some of your dramatic work like House of Mirth and Bleak House, and how characters like that, it might be hard to embody them a lot of the time and sort of go home at the end of the day feeling that character. But I feel like it would be fun to be Jean. I wonder if she like ever bleeds over into your real life, if you find her in a better mood playing Jean.
Well, she is a lot of fun. She's definitely a lot of fun. And I do feel that on the one hand, and I'm not sure this is a good thing, but she has allowed the Jean elements of myself as mom to come out. Whereas before I would have said, as I did, protest too much to the director, you know, she wouldn't do this or nobody would do this. And, cut to, I'm the one who blurts the thing out at the dinner table about a son's growing mustache, or, you know what I mean? Or that it's just all the things that I am now constantly, more than ever. The refrain is, Mom, more than it ever has been. And I think part of that is because Jean has somehow given me license to be inappropriate or just meddle a bit too much, or maybe more than I would have in the past.
At the same time, there is some really dramatic stuff. I mean, her ending her relationship with Yakov really broke my heart.
Mm. Yeah. Sad. But she's pregnant. Woohoo!
Oh, that's right. I actually forgot about that. That's going to be so fun. I mean, do you know anything about season 3? I don't know if they've even started writing it yet.
No, that they've definitely started writing it, and I don't know much, and I certainly don't know anything that I could talk about. But Jean's pregnant.
Wow. I'm sort of curious because I know this might be more of an American thing, but people often associate actors with their beloved characters. I'm sort of curious if people like see you on the street, do they want to ask you sex advice or?
Fortunately, no. But it is interesting how she has kind of overtaken my but the fandom, what comes at me on the street, or is definitely lately predominantly Jean, whereas when I was doing The Fall, there was as much Fall as there was as much Stella as there was leftover Scully from X-Files, or there's always been a balance, but Jean seems to have trumped them all for a little while now.
I remember talking to one of your X-Files co-stars, Mitch Pileggi, and he was saying that people always want to come up and tell him about how like they were abducted by aliens or things like that. So I guess you know who your audience is by what they want to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I've certainly been sent more vibrators than I ever have in my life, which is not a bad thing. No bad thing.
That's amazing. Before we go, I want to remind everyone watching at home that you can find information about SAG-AFTRA Foundation's COVID-19 Relief Fund in the comments. And I'm just sort of asking everyone, during this very strange time, how are you keeping active creatively? Are there things you're reading or watching that you sort of discovered?
Actually, to be honest, I've been reading predominantly Black literature and listening to podcasts hosted by predominantly African Americans, I would say. That's pretty much what's taken up my last few weeks.
Any recommendations? I just started reading Friday Black, which is kind of Black Mirror-ish short stories.
Yes, I would suggest, which it's the second, I listened to the audiobook of it, but I'd previously read it, which is I Will No Longer Talk to White People About Race. Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Is a fantastic book. And also because I live in the UK, it's very interesting for me to get better educated about the existence of racism in this country, which some will say is not as predominant as is in America, but I don't think that's true.
Really?
Yeah. So that's been good. There's a podcast called Galdem too, which is also based over here, which is a kind of a forum for women of color to talk about current events and things. And so I've been listening to that. And what else? And various relevant TED Talks and daily talks. And yeah.
Well, that's great. I want to thank you so much for being here today. I want to remind everyone, if they haven't already, check out Sex Education on Netflix. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Nice to be here. Thank you very much.